The Biden administration came into power. President Biden, we know elections have consequences. It was a mess of an election, but ultimately President Biden's there. And where the president is most powerful, where they have the most unchecked power constitutionally and throughout the courts through court precedent, is in the realm of foreign policy. And we knew that the Biden administration's foreign policy would not just be bad, but dangerous. Dangerous foreign policy, begging the Iranians, which so far they have not been successful in doing, but they're still trying, begging the Iranians to let the U.S. back into their bullet point JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. They're still begging that. No response to China on the fact that COVID-19 is likely their responsibility. You look at the situation in the Middle East. They're against the fact that Jerusalem's been recognized as the capital of Israel. They've talked about trying to reopen a separate embassy in Israel just for Palestinians. And that was an embassy that's had a lot of problems because it was basically a pro-Palestinian U.S. outpost, which is not how any of our embassies should be. Now, we knew, again, whether it was Russian aggression, Chinese aggression, Taiwan, Ukraine, again, COVID, the Iranian nuclear situation, we knew that this administration was going to be a disaster. Okay, they have proven that to be the case. Now, they've been pretty ineffective. But at the ACLJ, we took direct action by beefing up our team at the highest level. So we brought on former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. We brought on Rick Grenell, former Acting Director of National Intelligence and Ambassador to Germany. We were able to bring both of them on because we were in a financial position to do so. So when they are part of our team, they are not just guests on our radio broadcast. And I always want to encourage people to think past just the hour they see us a day on air or watch us or listen to us. They're not just coming on like guests of the broadcast. We are working with them behind the scenes. We're utilizing their expertise, their context, their knowledge in filings, in FOIA filings, for instance. We'll have them review to make sure we're not using words that would using the right language, taking it to the next level, if you will, at the ACLJ. But we were able to do that because even with COVID, even with the uncertainty surrounding the last election, people supported our work. They knew it was important to continue to support our work financially. So I thank all of you who did because we were able to make those moves. So this broadcast today, we're going to dive into all the foreign policy work that the ACLJ and our international affiliates is directly engaged in and how we've taken it to a next level. And so your financial support allows us to not just, again, and it's not just about bringing in Rick and Mike Pompeo. And again, I want to let you know, they are not just contributors to a radio broadcast. It's a senior counsel position and a senior advisor position.
I want people to understand, though, that are watching this, especially our ACLJ members, that while we don't have Mike Pompeo as Secretary of State and Donald Trump's not the president, and we've got another administration in there, the fact that these people are still being persecuted means we still have to be working on this. We have to use different avenues. But the issue of religious persecution, religious liberty is so central to mankind and to freedom and liberty. So I want people, because you've worked inside the government, outside. So when the government's not your friend, so to speak, you still have to do the work.
Yeah, now more than ever, right?
Yeah,
This is the central thesis, that the work required has to be redoubled. This administration has people inside of it who want to work on this. We need to enable them to. We need to encourage them. We need to prod them. And when they get it right, we need to applaud them. But it's the case. It's going to require more private activity. We created these religious freedom ministerials. I refer to it, building religious freedom. We now brought it outside to civil society. That they weren't going to follow through on this inside the government, so we brought it out and held the first big event now 2 months ago.
Right.
This work is required. The need for religious freedom didn't go away when the Trump administration ended, and so it will now take even more effort, more resources, more energy to promoting this cause.
Yeah, I think you're right. Maybe even more so when you've got to use different avenues to get the job done.
We are in a matching challenge here at the American Center for Law and Justice, and that means any amount you donate to the ACLJ, we have someone that's going to match that. So if you make a $20 gift, someone's going to give another $20, makes it $40. We encourage you to participate. Matching challenges are very important for our ongoing work here at the ACLJ. Simply go to aclj.org. That's aclj.org and become part of the Matching Challenge campaign.
One of the issues that's key to the ACLJ, Secretary Pompeo, is the defense of the unborn. And you've made that comment that we went from the most pro-life administration in our nation's history to the most pro-abortion and extremely hostile administration. It's not just President Biden saying he's pro-abortion and putting in some actors that have come from that world. He has put in activists from the pro-abortion world, from the world of Planned Parenthood, especially Becerra at HHS, at Health and Human Services, who have taken an actual hostile view to pro-life Americans. And we recently just saw a nurse in Vermont, a client of ours, didn't want to file the civil lawsuit because she wanted to maintain her job, but utilized a new vehicle that was set up under the Trump administration at HHS to file a complaint because she was forced to perform an abortion procedure, even though she was on the list of people at the hospital with conscience protections. Department of Justice was actively engaged in a legal fight. They're about to file the lawsuit, and now they've pulled out and asked to dismiss. I mean, that's the difference between just one example of the previous administration and the current administration, not even standing up for an American's individual rights to have that pro-life conviction.
These folks on abortion are radical. This isn't just going back from where we were, radically pro-life. This is not back to the middle. This is absolute hostility, used exactly the right word, whether it's denying this person to exercise their own conscience rights, promoting and funding and underwriting right. They're trying to get rid of the Hyde Amendment that's been law for years that prevented taxpayer money from going to abortions. They want to repeal the Hyde Amendment. Frankly, it was largely bipartisan for all of these years. They want to undo that. They are now actively taking U.S. taxpayer dollars abroad and using them to support groups who are promoting abortion all over the world. Now, we were talking about what's happening in the Chinese Communist Party, right, where they're forcing women to have abortions. We now have an administration that is actively promoting the destruction of human life in a way that is so antithetical to, I think, what most Americans' common sense would tell them. This is dangerous. It is a radical shift, and it's why the work that has to be done by groups like the ACLJ today is so imperative. We have to protect every unborn life.
You know, Jordan mentioned Becerra, the HHS secretary, so we took him to the Supreme Court about a year and a half ago.
I remember that. He
was fighting. This was so absurd. It wasn't on Roe versus Wade. It was he had mandated, as Attorney General, that warning statements be placed inside pro-life crisis pregnancy center, women's centers, saying, we don't give abortions. Here's the place to get your abortion. We don't give abortions. It's called compelled speech, which the Supreme Court for 150 years says you can't do that. So we take him to the Supreme Court of the United States. We win. And his reward for taking that position is he's the HHS secretary. I mean, it is incredible.
It's remarkable. Warning: we have a dangerous HHS secretary.
Yeah, that's what we should be. That's what we should be posting. We do see the importance of the judiciary as it relates to the life issue, which means the consequence of an election for president is the appointment of Supreme Court justices, and that fundamentally is one of the lasting legacies of any president.
It is, and I pray that the three that President Trump got, we're very blessed to get three. Not many presidents get that. I pray that those three come to deliver on the constitutional commitments that they made during their confirmation hearings. If you listen to them, they were all deeply respectful of the Constitution. If one respects our Constitution, then Roe can't stand. Yeah,
Roe, even there are liberal scholars that have said Roe's underpinnings were constitutionally suspect.
It's a horribly decided case. As a constitutional matter, wholly apart from the life issue that it surrounds. I hope that they'll do this. I hope they'll be thoughtful. I hope that they will deeply consider that we've been living under this now for decades. It's wrongly decided. They should go fix it, just as in the great historic cases have been fixed before, and then return this. That's what Roe will do, is return states the power
to decide what they want to do.
This would be a huge step forward for both our constitutional jurisprudence and for the protection of the unborn.
It also would reduce the number of abortions, because the numbers of abortions were being significantly reduced in the last several years. The trend line has been that way. A little-known fact with Harry Blackmun in the writing of Roe v. Wade, I've argued enough abortion cases up there that I've studied Justice Blackmun. And Harry Blackmun spent the summer preparing for his opinion, knowing the case was going to be on the docket. I think it may have been in the fall, he went up to the Mayo Clinic to the medical library. Now, that's a dangerous move when a justice of the Supreme Court starts reading the medical literature, the peer-reviewed journals. And then he came to this, three-trimester approach to it, which has no constitutional underpinning. But again, as we've said, the lasting legacy of a president is the Supreme Court justices. It doesn't predict how they would vote in a particular case. Of course. We never ask, and I've been involved as a lawyer advising presidents on Supreme Court justices, including these Supreme Court justices. But the fact of the matter is this: we never ask how they would rule in Roe versus Wade. The Democrats always ask how they're going to.
No, the hypocrisy's crazy. Two things that you made me think of there, Jay. If you went to the medical literature today, no one disputes that these are lives.
Right.
The science, our knowledge has grown
because
so
of the imaging.
much.
I mean,
because the imaging in these 45, 50 years is just. No one can go to the Mayo Clinic today and not walk away saying that these are lives that deserve to be brought from the womb alive. The second thought, your point about how we approach the court. We approach the court from an understanding of our American history and our founding. If these justices will simply return to that, our constitutional documents, Roe will vanish, and these babies will be born.
We are in a matching challenge here at the American Center for Law and Justice, and that means any amount you donate to the ACLJ, we have someone that's going to match that. So if you make a $20 gift, someone's going to give another $20, makes it $40. We encourage you to participate. Matching challenges are very important for our ongoing work here at the ACLJ. Simply go to aclj.org. That's aclj.org and become part of the Matching Challenge campaign.
One last issue on the life issue is that we know that there are a couple of cases that the left is watching very closely, and they're watching them to see, could this be the way we make the move to get rid of the filibuster and put in place, pack the court?
Yeah.
And we've been doing a lot of education on this because people think, well, that's really got to take a constitutional amendment. And it doesn't. It's an act of Congress. We have a divided Congress right now, right on that line. But they are looking to these cases. I mean, to me, though, that
almost is an excuse.
As an excuse, as a way to say, I don't even know if they care with the outcome so much as a reason to even have this discussion. But it's a real discussion happening right now.
I chuckle. I remember I was reading the New York Times and the Washington Post almost every day. The Trump administration is tearing down American institutions. They have no respect for the Constitution, no respect for our history and our tradition. These folks come in and want to add a state, destroy the filibuster, right?
Pack the court.
Pack the court. I mean, the list is endless of institution destruction that's being put under the guise of the left or because COVID, whatever the storyline of the day may be. These folks that aren't respecting our tradition. You're right about the courts. They are so powerful, so important, and elections matter because President Trump was able to put a whole bunch of judges on district courts and appellate judges across America, too. This will have a profound impact on our country.
Jefferson said he thought, the judiciary was going to be the weakest branch of government. Yeah. Well, it didn't work out that way. But what's interesting about the court for just a moment is that in a lot of of course, it's been an unusual 2 years of argument. I did 3 of them on the phone. I mean, it's because of the pandemic. And when I look at the court now, to compare where it was even, 5, 6 years ago, it's a very different court. I mean, your administration got 3 Supreme Court justices, countless courts of appeals, and district court judges. In all those matters, most cases don't go to the Supreme Court. But let me just ask you this. What would, if you were the President of the United States and you were interviewing a Supreme Court justice, a potential nominee, what is the key thing? You don't ask on a particular case. What would you be asking them?
I want to make sure that they shared my understanding of our Constitution and the court's role in interpreting that Constitution, and frankly, an understanding of the things Congress is permitted to do and not do as well. We've allowed so much of the administrative state to rise up because we've deferred somehow to this idea that we can have elected officials engaged in activity that impacts privacy and freedom and liberty all across the United States of America. It has diminished our country. So a deep understanding of the Constitution, enough intellect to make sure that they can smell a phony story when they get one presented by a very talented lawyer who's sure to come before them.
Yep.
And then the last thing would be a courage. Courage to know, right? This is not a court that should be deciding based on what the people of the United States are thinking at any given moment,
or what the Washington Post is writing,
Washington Post is writing, or what the rally on the steps of the courthouse is.
Right.
Those are small but loud voices. They need to go back to the original understanding. If we get that piece right, these justices will serve us well.
Secretary Pompeo, you led the CIA, the State Department. You understand running massive bureaucracies where it's not always that the bureaucrats working there have the same idea, and sometimes they are even working against the positions of the administration that they are supposed to be serving. We certainly have saw that under the Trump administration, where it seemed like people were trying to undermine constantly, but that it was always a Washington problem. But it seemed like it was just exploded under the Trump administration. There's the idea that these bureaucrats felt like they could be leaking to the press, classified information, just to undermine. And I know that's not most probably people working there, but there were certainly enough, and they're still there today. While politicians come and go and elected officials come and go, they remain in Washington, and they feel like they run it, even though that they are not the chosen people to run these. So what was that like, that play, coming in knowing that there's a lot of these people were pretty hostile to the policies you wanted to put in place?
Yeah, it was tough. There's no doubt about it. Your point's well taken. There are good people working at the State Department who are trying to execute the president's mission, but there were an awful lot who were resistance to most everything we were trying to do. I think it was especially true of the Trump administration. We were breaking a lot of glass. We talked about the Middle East. We talked about our policy in North Korea a little bit. But we were taking positions that were at odds with a 40, 50-year Washington, D.C. foreign policy establishment. And if there's any place in the world that is the D.C. establishment, it's the State Department. Right. And so it was, there was enormous resistance. And so they tried to undermine in so many different ways. My mission set every day was just to make sure that I understood the president's command and intent clearly, and then to make the machine go perform that function. And so we tried to get everyone on that page. That's our responsibility, right? The president was elected. He was the duly elected president of the United States. Our responsibility is to execute the foreign policy that he lays out. And I tried to remind everyone that we are there for a moment in time, that this is our place, and we are to do what the people have asked our leadership to do. It's a real challenge.
In talking about foreign affairs, we often talk about these governments having, we'll say in Turkey, there's volumes written on the deep state, the state that runs the underlying bureaucrats that run Turkey, that you may have an agency saying one thing, but here's what's really happening. But we kind of have a little bit of a deep state situation in some agencies in the United States. And I'm not talking about conspiracies. I'm talking about reality. You call it whatever you want, but I'll give a for instance. So we filed a Freedom of Information Act request on the Obama White House. The issue was the negotiations with Iran relating to the nuclear program. And the fact that they had initially had a video up that the edit was so obvious of what they took out that all of our team here said that wasn't a glitch. That was a white flash edit on purpose. So because we have really smart people in our media teams, so we sent out we took the intelligence of our video teams and sent out a FOIA request to the State Department. Had to go to court, had to fight them. We won. We get an email that shows what happened, which we knew would happen, was, of course, somebody intentionally edited this piece out, which would have disclosed the whole, what was really going on. But we found an email that said that they were trying to quote, this is from Jen Psaki, who's now the White House press spokesperson, shut down and battening down the hatches on any public discussions of negotiations. Now, while you have individual negotiations, I understand those can't be public, but they were parroting one story to the public, that we've got a more moderate president coming in, and that's why we've started this, when in fact, they started the negotiation with the previous president. So issues that the ACLJ engages in, like Freedom of Information Act litigation, how important is that?
Yeah, it's really important. And to get the machine to respond to these things, you said how many years it took you.
5.
I saw this time and time again. I was in charge of the State Department, and to get the State Department to respond to things, right? The team beneath me would say, yes, sir, we're working on it, and then weeks would go by. And so you just had to continue to hammer this idea that we have bureaucrats operating in ways that are disconnected. By the way, full transparency, I want the State Department today to do what President Biden wants them to do. This is their mission. It's not to execute my mission. It's the president's mission.
Right, exactly.
But it's Republican administrations that suffer this, because the people who will be career people, they'll stay there all the time, tend to be left of center, tend to have come there, and they have taken over these machines in ways that really undermine what the American people deserve.
From the outside looking in, it just seems like what you just said. When the new administration comes in and it happens to be Democrat to the left, it's tough to see the difference between the bureaucrats and the political appointees. They're all so in line with the ideology that they were willing to even act. Sometimes we saw it under the Obama years, the IRS, even.
Yeah, sure.
But certainly at the State Department, they're willing to act in a political manner, which violates their own rules as bureaucrats. But it's tough to see the difference between who is actually a political appointee and who is someone who has made this their career.
So we were able ultimately, and it took us too long, but we were ultimately able to get really talented political appointees that were in there just, they're pipe hitters, getting after it, demanding that the bureaucracy respond to the demands of what I was trying to do, what the president was trying to do. But it shouldn't be that hard. It should be that you provide the commander's intent and the machine executes, the bureaucracy executes. Instead, they resist, they undermine, they leak back and forth between the State Department and Congress. I could go on about this for hours, truly in an effort to undermine the foreign policy of the United States of America.
We are in a matching challenge here at the American Center for Law and Justice, and that means any amount you donate to the ACLJ, we have someone that's going to match that. So if you make a $20 gift, someone's going to give another $20, makes it $40. Simply go to ACLJ.org. That's ACLJ.org and become part of the Matching Challenge campaign.
Thanks to your support of the ACLJ, we have had many victories.
The IRS now formally apologizing to Tea Party groups.
The IRS did the right thing by resolving the case with an injunction that mandated a complete change of the IRS nonprofit tax-exempt work as it relates to issue advocacy organization.
If any group feels like they're being targeted, they can go to federal court and bring our case. That's a victory.
We had an organization that believed in our claim, they knew that we were right, and they were going to help navigate that process to help us achieve success, and they did.
It's one of the most significant wins in the ACLJ's history, to take on the IRS and win.
For more than 27 years, the ACLJ has been fighting for freedom and liberty in the United States and around the globe.
These are young people in their 20s and 30s that are doing this. They're fighting for life at a whole new level to beat back the abortion juggernaut. We've got a whole group of young lawyers that are defending them.
Those of us that believe in life know that we're on the right side of history. We understand full well children are children, and they're precious in God's sight, and they're precious in our nation's sight, and they're precious to parents.
We have to not just say that we are pro-life. We have to actually be pro-life. We have to get uncomfortable to do everything we can to promote a culture of life.
But I actually think we're winning. This is one of the social issues we're winning.
We have to be cognizant of the fact that globally, persecution is as alive and well as it has ever been.
The level of persecution is on the rise. It's being reported more.
We're talking about situations where people are put in jail, threatened with death or life imprisonment, simply because of who they are and what they believe.
For the release of Andrew Brunson. He is the American evangelical from North Carolina, held in Turkey for more than 2 years.
They're rushing us to the airport, and there was an Air Force plane that came from Germany that had been on standby. We're flying, and they finally left Turkish airspace. It's like, okay, now we're really out of Turkey and free again.
We're grateful to ACLJ who put it out to these people, you know, they were getting all this out.
All of the people who prayed for us through ACLJ and through your contacts, I'm thankful, I'm grateful, and actually I'm astounded.
We need your help as we continue this work here in the United States and around the world.
They gave us the force. They stood up for us. They fought for us.
Our job as the lawyers was to make sure our clients were able to communicate their message of life.
It was an amazing thing to be convicted, and then a day later I'm back in the States with my family and in the White House.
Join us online at the American Center for Law and Justice at aclj.org.